Wow, Julie is making YouTube content that is not just uploading James Mason talks. Crazy, I know, but there are three reasons why I'm making this video. First of all, because I summarized ideology probably around 200 times in Discord, so I thought to myself, when there's clearly a need for it, why not just make a video about it? Second is because National Bolshevism, at least online, is often spoken about in relation to the Russian Nazbol party led by Limonov, which is neither nationalism or Bolshevism or even socialism in any sense. So I will link another video in the description which explains why they're not socialists, and I will shortly sum up why they're not nationalists. Limonov doesn't care about anything but aesthetics. It has nothing resembling blood and soil, so Limonov can go back to writing erotica fanfiction, but it's certainly not National Bolshevism. Also, the most important reason is probably that most material of German Nazbol is not available in English, so it's hard to get knowledge about it if you don't speak German. Luckily, as a German, who speaks German surprisingly, I can probably summarize it the best. I categorize this video in 4 parts, starting with Karl Paetel himself. Karl Otto Paetel was born in 1906 in Berlin, and he joined the Könige Freibund very early in his life. You can basically see it as very esoteric Boy Scouts. It had a big root in Indo-Germanism, which is basically Indo-Germanic paganism especially. So you had this pagan root combined with hardcore nationalism, so we can already see he was a very strong nationalist early in his youth. The paganism part kind of fell off, or it was just not mentioned again in his later works. But yeah, early hardcore nationalist, and maybe the paganist part just fell away, so who knows. In 1928 he started studying history and philosophy, also in Berlin, and then he got kicked out of the German Freischar because he was too contrarian in the current political climate. So we can already see he's a little bit special, he's a little bit loco in this sense. Also, he was never a Strasserite or a Nazi in any sense, but he worked as a publisher or like an assistant in the Socialist Nation and released the National Bolshevist Manifesto in 1933. Of course, the special part about National Bolshevism, compared to other socialist ideologies, is the very special nationalism, so we will start with that. So what makes nationalism and National Bolshevism so different from, for example, National Socialist nationalism or ML nationalism, or, for example, meaningless ideologies, for like, what makes a difference to liberal nationalism, quote-unquote nationalism? Now, first of all, the term of race. The term of race is not used in the National Bolshevist Manifesto, and it's very purposefully not used in the National Bolshevist Manifesto, because it's referred to as a thing called biology. He is using that to make it distinct in a way that he doesn't try to put any esoteric tonations onto the word race. The National Socialists, who were alive and who were active at the time, put race as the main thing. The race makes the Volk. The race is the Volk, and thereby the Volk is the nation. Volk, of course, is very important to know. Volk is a German term that means, for example, a people, but in a very nationalistic tonation. He does not automatically equalize biology and the nation. Not at all. He does the exact opposite. He says biology makes the Volk, or biology makes a people, but a people does not automatically make a nation. So how is this important? Well, he sees the biology as something that needs to be addressed as a requirement, as a necessity. A necessity for unity, and unity is a necessity for revolution, and revolution is a necessity to become a nation. So, his quote is, biology makes a people, but a people doesn't make a nation automatically. So what is our goal? To become a nation. How do we do that? By revolution. What is our warranty? Socialism. So socialism is seen as a tool to become a nation. Equally is biology seen as something that must be considered. For example, hunger or drinking. Having hunger is something that needs to be addressed when you have a nation. That your people need to drink is something that needs to be addressed. If your people don't drink, they will die. So drinking is not good or bad. It's simply something that is a requirement. It is something part of you. It is biology. Same as, for example, race. Race is biology. It needs to be addressed, or else you will have a lack in something. So this is how he sees race. Nothing more than a requirement. Neither good or bad, just nature. He also is very opposed to, for example, the idea that you can overcome race. So transhumanists kind of get fucked off here. He doesn't think that race, or biology in his case, is something worth overcoming. It is simply something that we need for unification. You cannot have a revolution without unity, and you cannot have unity without addressing biology. So this makes it distinct from, for example, ML nationalism, which completely throws biology out of the window, which calls any talking about race pseudoscience or something like that. We can also go into anarchist directions who nowadays say that race is some Eurocentric hierarchical racial bullshit. Biology is the requirement for socialism. Biology is the tool for socialism to become a nation. It is one thing of many. So what kind of socialism does Karl Paetel want? Well, let's get into that. So what makes the Bolshevism of Karl Paetel so special? What makes the socialism the National Bolsheviks aspired so crazy and wild that even suggesting it at the KPD got them thrown out of the party? Well, fucking nothing. It's just what the KPD wanted in 1925 to 1933. So nothing that special. So if you understand the KPD, you also understand Karl Paetel to a large extent. But I shall go into detail. He wanted a full abolishment of private property. He wanted full nationalization of ground and earth, in his own terminology, Nationalismus von Grund und Boden. He especially made a focus on, for example, stuff like mines, natural resources, and banks. He wanted a central planned economy with the state having a monopoly on exports, so the autarky of the nation can be secured. He wanted to put the weapons into the hands of the people, thereby creating a Volksheer and not an army ruled by a bourgeois militaristic elite. He also was not as authoritarian as you would expect. A lot of people think National Bolshevism is basically National Socialism with a Führer, but, actually socialist. This is not the case at all. He was pretty free, actually. He wanted a Rätestaat. He wanted a council state, basically. He talked a lot about Räte. In English, I could probably translate it best to councils. He wanted loads of regional councils that then become, the collective basically becomes one big piece. The only big difference to classical Marxism is his opinion on internationalism. He called internationalism a fata morgana, a delusion, an outdated concept. How, in his opinion, Marxism works is that internationalism, in an orthodox sense, is one big piece. It is the world becomes one big socialist nation. But this is not the case of Karl Paetel. He thinks this is retarded. He thinks that we should aspire internationalism, but on a economical level only. He wanted internationalism to become a part of a lot of little pictures coming together. He was not even that opposed to the abolishment of autarky when every nation around him becomes socialist, but he was certainly seeing autarky as the absolute necessity as long as capitalism still exists. So this is where the major difference comes in. The term Fata Morgana is of course chosen very specifically, saying that of course it's a nice aspiration, it is a good thing to think about, but in practicality it simply does not exist. Thereby it should not be aspired at the moment. As far as I know, Stalin saw a letter of National Bolshevism and he called it retarded. So of course there's a lot of conflict in the terminology here. But in general, it was not that different from what the KPD aspired. It was not as authoritarian, and it certainly did not justify the major split that happened in the communists back then. So, well, how did the split happen? In what cultural context was National Bolshevism set in? Not only in what cultural context was it set in, also what is the modern cultural context of it.
Arbeiter bauen, feststellen die Waffen, heut ist das heilige Pflicht.
So in what cultural context was the National Bolshevist Manifesto released in? Well, in a pretty wild context actually. The Weimar Republic was a pretty goofy time. It was a pretty fun time. Basically, it was one of the few times in the West where everybody could have a chance. No matter if you were extreme left or extreme right wing, everybody could have a chance to get into power. The Spartakists had a chance and they failed. The far left would have a chance. The Nazis, everybody had a good chance because it was just such a shitty situation to be in. And he himself said, after the Nazis fail, the National Bolshevists shall get into power. But yeah, in the context of the Nazis, first of all, he didn't see the Nazis necessarily as something evil. He saw the NSDAP as almost like a friend with flaws that got infected. This not only to the Hitlerites, but also to Strasser. He didn't have an actual opposition to Strasser. He didn't actually dislike Strasser. It was more like, well, I'm gonna be honest, he called Strasser literally retarded. He said if Strasser would actually understand Marxism, his criticisms of Marxism wouldn't be the criticisms that he gives. So he certainly thinks that people that support Strasser don't understand Marxism enough, or Bolshevism. So yeah, he wasn't a Strasserite, but he joined the Black Front because of course he was in opposition to the Hitlerites, which were even worse. So, he of course has major criticisms in the KPD, and the Frankfurter KPD in 1926 actually did an Ausschlussverfahren, which means like an expel trial for two strong nationalists. So of course, when very nationalist workers aren't allowed to be nationalists, and of course they go to the NSDAP. So in his opinion, a lot of workers that could have been communists joined the NSDAP because of the absolute retarded behavior that the KPD did in 1926. So who is to blame for the failure of communism in the Weimar Republic? Who is to blame that the KPD could not attract enough people to even compare to the Nazis? Well, of course, it's easy to point at the Nazis and say the Nazis beat the shit out of everybody they disagreed with, but this would be more of a pro-point to the Nazis instead of an explanation to why the KPD didn't do that. Well, the KPD couldn't attract people because they were in no connection to the actual worker at the time, or the majority of the workers at least. The leadership of the KPD was full of intellectual elitists who had no interest or idea of what nationalism or the importance of nationalism for the worker. A lot of leadership was of course Jewish, so I don't blame them that they couldn't understand it, but a large extent was complete miscommunication between the actual working class and the leadership, very similar to how we see it today. We can see this especially in the Frankfurter KPD in 1926, when they did multiple Ausschlussverfahrens, or exclusion trials, against nationalistic workers. This was a pretty clear signal, of course. The workers saw that, well, if I'm a worker and I'm a nationalist, I'm not welcome there, so they went to the NSDAP. The NSDAP, of course, then after Hitler was not that socialist at all, even under Strasser it was not socialist at all. But they believed that, and that's how they got attraction. They lost connection to the worker. We can see this probably very similar today, so we should put this lesson into modern context. That the left should not completely disregard what the workers want. There's a reason why, for example, the average worker has nationalistic tendencies. There's a reason why the average worker does not care about trans-binary anarcho-feminist theory. You should maybe not focus your fucking ideology on that. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Focus on the economic principles of it. This is how you get people. Are you fucking retarded? Don't do that shit. It doesn't make any sense. It's the same situation. There's a reason why people vote, in Europe at least, there's a reason why people vote for the AfD. Because even though the AfD are free market capitalistic retards, they advocate for nationalism, and that attracts the working class. So maybe instead of saying, well, they're just fucking low-life scum, instead address it. Instead, try to come to a compromise. Even if you do not like nationalism at all, if the worker wants it, you should address it. You should adjust your program to it. Nobody cares about orthodox Marxist theory or genderqueer theory. This is not how you attract workers. Because what will happen is, they will go to people like the alt-right, who basically are cultural capitalists, but white, and these people will come together and they will beat the shit out of you. This is a lesson that you should maybe take out of it. I'm not telling you that. I don't even tell you people to become a national Bolshevist. I'm not telling you at all. I just say take the fucking lesson out of it. Same thing for the third position and the right wing. If you are right wing, you should maybe drop that shit. Nobody cares about capitalism anymore. It clearly doesn't work. So try to adjust it. Capitalism will not fix itself by more capitalism. And if you want to attract people, you need to address the problems. So if you are a right winger, you should consider joining the third position. And if you are a kind of third positionist, the typical national socialist who says, well, economics are important, it doesn't matter, it's the culture that matters. Of course, the culture matters. Of course, nationalism matters. Nationalism is the fun part, because you can yell at minorities. But socialism is a requirement. You cannot be a nationalist without socialism, because socialism will justify you the autarky. Socialism will justify your actual security. If you are a capitalist, you're an internationalist, and you belong into the trash, and you belong under the rope. But if you are actual national socialist, if you are a fascist, you should look into it. I'm not telling you to become an actual national Bolshevist. If you are more authoritarian, go for it. But you need to address it like the left. So this was what we can learn from it. Isn't it beautiful how both the left and the right and the third position can take a lesson out of it? I think it's kind of nice. This was my summary of National Bolshevism, as good as I could have. This video was a real big pain. I don't want to do it again. Have fun.